Walt once said, "Remember one thing, it all started with a mouse." And while that's true, there was one thing that really thrusted the company from just another cartoon-making machine into the worldwide conglomerate of media ever. And that was way back in 1937 when Walt Disney and Company made what was supposed to be their biggest folly, a big flop, and what would absolutely destroy the company. And that was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Welcome back to another episode of Walt Wednesdays, and today we're going to talk about the brief history of this movie, the legacy that it carries, and my personal opinions on the movie. So, without further ado, let's get started. After Laugh-O-Grams failed as a company and all of his animators moved to Universal and he lost the rights to both Alice and Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, Mickey Mouse was born on a train ride back home. Ub Iwerks later reinvented the design for Mickey Mouse, and thus they created the Mickey Mouse shorts and a bunch of others that really created their newly formed company. He brought his brother Roy to do the financing and some more animators to hop on, and thus Walt Disney Pictures was born. All throughout the 30s, they did nothing but make short cartoons, and you'd have the Silly Symphonies, and won some technical achievements, but Walt wanted to do something more. He didn't want to do just cartoons, he wanted to really shake things up. So, on a vacation, he really wanted to do a fairy tale, and one that Walt grew up watching at the theater growing up was Snow White and Seven Dwarfs. So when he came back, one of the best stories ever of the Walt Disney Company was Walt's enthusiasm to do a full-length feature film, animated feature film, of Snow White, and he would tell the story countless times to many of the animators. The animators, we even asked them just to see the fire that Walt had in his eyes, telling the story, being each and every character. And when word got out that they were going to do a full-length animated feature film, people were very skeptical. It was deemed as Disney's folly. It was supposed to flop. No one really thought that they would go to a theater nonetheless during the Great Depression and watch an hour-long cartoon. It was unheard of. It was ridiculous. It was absurd and crazy. But it worked. While Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs didn't win any Oscars, it did, however, receive a bunch of technical awards at the Academy Awards. So it really did something for the company. It showed that cartoons weren't just for kids, it is an art form. And Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs really shows that. When I went back to watch this movie, I didn't know what to expect because it's been many years. It's a long time since I've watched Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, to be honest. So, going into it, I was actually really excited. And after watching it, I realized how different it is, and the best of ways this movie was. You could really get a sense of the style, the way it tells the story, the animation style, the way in which they did cartoons back in the 30s, but it has a charm, it has a very artful sort of way, and there's just, I want to say that the lines, I don't know if the lines are darker or what it is that it does, but nothing looks like animation that the 30s did. It's got a very watercolored sort of style that this movie has, and I love it. I absolutely love it. If you guys haven't played Cuphead, it's very reminiscent to like the older Disney cartoons. More particularly, it gives me more of like a Max Fleischer sort of style. Way back that Paramount used to do, like say with some of their cartoons, or maybe like Popeye, or I think one thing I really take away is the rotoscoping. You can definitely tell that they had actors in the studio that the animators would watch so they could animate it. It has a very lifelike motion to it, kind of reminiscent to when Paramount did the animated Superman cartoons back in the 30s as well, which are really great if you haven't watched them. And you would later see in the 80s, I think, with Heavy Metal, which they also used the rotoscoping method. And there's no other kind of animation that has that sort of style. I love it. I love the animation style. I love how dark this movie can get. There's some scary imagery, more particularly when Snow White is running through the forest from the woodsman, and these trees have these evil sort of look. The evil queen in this movie has a really great design. The mirror on the wall has a very darker sort of design. The first five movies that the Walt Disney Company did, which, if you don't know, is Snow White, Pinocchio, Fantasia, Dumbo, and Bambi. They are the golden era of the Disney animation. They set the bar and really pushed animation forward. And you can really tell within almost every single movie that they would do, on and on and on, which we'll get to at some point. But for a first start, this one does very, very well. Another big win, other than the animation style, has got to be its tried and true formula of side characters. And you could really tell that this movie also has the blueprints of what other Disney movies would later do. And that would be have very charming and scene-stealing side characters. Those, of course, in this movie being the Seven Dwarfs. They all get a chance to shine. They all have a unique personality that's hard to forget. And they steal the show. And I say that in the best and worst of ways. While the evil queen has a very great design and is very truly wicked, and the Seven Dwarfs are so unforgettable, the prince and especially Snow White don't have very much going for them. I think that has to be the weakest thing about this movie, is the character of Prince Charming and Snow White. And while it's not a deal-breaking thing, it is something that is noticeable. All that aside, though, this movie, I think, is still pretty darn solid. There is nothing wasted in this movie. It truly shows what a great first impression this movie really gives, and starts off a firm foundation of what the company would do. Even when you watch later adaptations, or more particularly princess films, they would have this sort of blueprint that Snow White starts, and for good reason. The Disney princess blueprint, greatest things about these movies outweigh the minor issues to so big of a degree that you don't really fault the movie for that. Is it noticeable? Absolutely. But it doesn't taint your experience and enjoy of the very charming and fun characters that each Disney movie does. And you could tell that this movie really shows that off, and would later show it off more and more and more throughout the company's history. I know there's not much I have to say about this movie, but it's one that's very important, especially considering the fact that Disney's next slate and their live-action series is going to be Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And I said how in the Little Mermaid video, which if you haven't watched, please check it out. It's a great story as well. It had a huge legacy, and why I think that live-action movie is so very important. I think that the live-action adaptation of Snow White that they're going to do is also very important. Maybe at some point I'll do a video on my thoughts about the live-action remakes. That's not what we're talking about today. However, both of these movies have a very profound legacy and importance in the company's history that we have to remember and address. And we have to look at them and understand why not only are they so beloved and remembered, but why they are important. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is still a fantastic movie. It's animated well. It's got great music still. It has unforgettable characters, and comes from a time that you never really see or will see an animation or movie style quite like they did way back in the late 30s, early 40s. It has a style of its own that just makes them so timeless. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching a new episode of Walt Wednesdays. I know this video is a little late, but I still hope you enjoyed it. If you have any movies or videos or series you would love to see me cover for Walt Wednesdays, leave them in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and also share with your friends. I appreciate you all so very much, and I can't wait to see you all guys in the next video.